All right, one of the best college football minds we've got in this country, PJ Glasser, also doing a live stream Monday, GameDay Garage. You can see it on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch. It's literally on everything, my friend. You were making your debut on GameDay Garage, and you get to tell the whole country about that now, you and Ryan Horvat. But I do want to look at this game. You and I have talked a little bit. I know you're an Alabama guy as a fan, but I know you're going to be unbiased here, Peach. I know you're not going to be somebody that's going to be talking all about Alabama and the villains. I look at this matchup and like it's at one for me, it's impossible for me to not look at Indiana just from a fan perspective and say, I want to see them win because of the story. I want to see them win because of Curt Cignetti and what he's been able to do with that program. They are unbeaten right now, and they have a number one. Indiana has a number one next to their name in college football. Do they go finish this season undefeated? Do they beat Miami? Because that is a wild concept to even think about right now.
It really is, and I think they do, Nick. And at the start of the playoff, I didn't think it would happen because I thought unless you were like an all-time great college football team, it would be too hard to go 16-0. You know, like it's too hard to beat that many good teams. Like with how great Ohio State was at the end of last season, even they dropped 2 games. You know what I mean? Like it's hard to go undefeated. We haven't seen it done since Joe Burrow's LSU team in 2019 and Mac Jones and Devontae Smith's Bama's team in 2020. And this Indiana team is the closest thing that we've seen since those two. They're just a juggernaut. They're beating everybody up. Their execution. Nick, all these other teams are making mistakes and Indiana doesn't. They convert third downs. They force turnovers. They rush the passer. They run the ball. They just do everything well. So it's crazy to, you know, you kind of got to pinch yourself watching Indiana football being as good as they are. And like you said, have a number one next to their name. But we also better get used to it because as long as Cignetti's there, they aren't going anywhere. We're going to have to kind of recalibrate our minds to Indiana being this dominant powerhouse in football because I think they are here to stay for the foreseeable future. And it all starts with their win on Monday night.
See, I'm glad that you said that because it's one thing for them to do it in the short term, but it's another to do it in the long term. Now, I'm going to ask you a question, and I know you're Alabama ties as an alum, but you know I know you're going to be honest with me here. Could Curt Cignetti, not just as a coach, but also with the personality, the persona, all these things, you know where I'm going with this? Could he be the guy that replaces Nick Saban as like the grumpy coach that's also really incredible at his job, but that's also kind of a jackass sometimes, but like you have to respect?
I think so. And I think it's because of how many like characteristics that they share. You know what I mean? He's obviously a great coach for one. What I love about Cignetti and the things that remind me so much of Saban that he does, he's a master motivator. Nick, like one of my biggest takeaways was from Indiana winning the Big Ten championship against Ohio State. It was a great win. It was a great upset. Not many people thought they could win that game. They did. But immediately after they win, he's on the podium talking about how he has to get his team ready in 3 weeks, knowing that everybody's going to be telling him how great they are. Like that is just so Saban, right? Next level, thinking about how you're going to motivate your kids, like put out all that rat poison. So I love that. The execution that I just talked about, a couple minutes ago, like Nick, that's what made all those Bama teams so great is you just watch them play and it would drive you crazy. They would pull your hair out at how these 19, 20-year-old kids could execute so perfectly. And that's what Indiana does. And then, like you said, we all see Saban going ballistic on the sidelines, never satisfied. Like you never see the tantrums with Cignetti, but you also never see him crack a smile. So I don't think it's a crazy take. It'll be hard for him to top the success that Saban has had, but as far as like a coach in this modern day era since Saban's retired, I think this guy's the closest thing that we've seen so far.
If Indiana does win, does Curt Cignetti crack a smile when he's on the podium being interviewed?
Absolutely. I think at that point you have to, right? Even when Saban won the title, he would crack a smile. So, yeah, I think Cignetti will.
All right, so let's play the alternate reality here now. Miami wins this national championship. How?
Well, they got to force turnovers for one. Nobody's been able to do that against Indiana really all year. But when you're an underdog of that many points, you have to generate extra possessions, right? Especially if your defense can score for you. That's what led Miami to that upset over Ohio State, was that pick six that put them up 14-0. If Miami can jump on Indiana early, Nick, right? A team that is so used to playing ahead, when all the pressure is on Indiana, if they can get out to a good start, force some turnovers, and especially score with their defense, that's going to be massive. Carson Beck is also going to continue he has to take care of the football, So the defense is going to have to force turnovers, but Beck is also going to have to limit the turnovers. So many people, myself included, weren't a believer in Miami coming into the playoff because, they played A&M in the first round, and that was Ohio State. And it's like, I don't trust Carson Beck to beat any of these teams, but to his credit, he hasn't turned the ball over. He's made plays when he's needed to. And Miami on both lines of scrimmage has just been really, really good. But I think it all starts with a fast start. Indiana's been able to jump on these teams. They've been able to get early leads, and then you just can't come from behind. If Miami can get up early, 7-0, 10-0, 14-3, create a little doubt on the Hoosiers, then we get ourselves a game, and then maybe Miami can pull the upset.
I'm sure no matter what, we're going to see Michael Irvin dancing on the sidelines, right? Like that's just going to be nonstop the entire time.
The entire time. And he'll have a belt in his hand. He'll either be giving the other team the belt or he'll be giving himself the belt because Indiana is just up by so many points on Miami. So, we need a Michael Irvin cam because it'll be entertaining regardless.
It is. Well, I think he's streaming on his YouTube channel or something, isn't he? I think that's what it is.
Oh, I didn't see that. I hope so. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. I'm not totally sure. Talking to PJ Glasser here. When I look at Indiana, obviously Fernando Mendoza is the guy that everybody knows is going to be the number one overall pick by the Raiders. What do you think of Fernando Mendoza, not as a college quarterback, but as an NFL prospect?
I'm not as high on him as a lot of other people are. My comp for Mendoza is Kirk Cousins. That's who I kind of see. Now, he's more mobile than Cousins was coming out of Michigan State. And you've seen that in the playoff. Mendoza's extended a lot of drives on third down with his legs, but just kind of, the way that he processes the defense, the way that he throws the football a little bit, I don't think he's going to be a bust, but I don't think he's going to be like a generational franchise quarterback. Like, I don't think we're ever going to look at him as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in football. I think he's going to be a good player. I think he's going to have some seasons where he's really good. But I think if the Raiders, draft him, like I wouldn't expect him to be, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar. Like, I don't think he's ever going to turn into one of those guys.
Indiana heading into next year. I mean, obviously right now the focus is still this game coming up Monday night, but like, let's be real. We know that there's recruiting. We know there's transfer portal. We know that college football is really now turned in the NFL in a lot of ways in terms of it being this year-round spectacle in some ways. When you look at Indiana's recruiting class coming into next year and just Indiana as a whole, can they get back to this game again, given the talent they have? Or is this going to be one of those things spread out a little bit more with an Alabama and a Georgia and a Ohio State and start going down with some of these blue bloods again? Because this tournament this year has been the ultimate parody for them.
Yeah, it has. And it's a great question because I think coming into this season, Nick, everybody thought that Indiana was just a one-year wonder. They have this great season. It's this great story with Signetti, but the era that we're in with the portal and NIL, and even though they had some guys come back, like they weren't going to have the same success that they were going to have. And also it's Indiana, right? So like, can Indiana really sustain that high level of program when you're in the same conference as a Michigan and Ohio State and Oregon? But I think this offseason is going to be the real sign. I don't think they're going anywhere. I still think they're going to be in the playoff next year. I still think they're going to be contending for the Big Ten and all of that stuff. The reason that I say next year is where it's really going to start to see how things go with the Hoosiers is because you're going to see more roster turnover going into this offseason. You know, even though they did have some guys transfer in and out and they lost some players, it wasn't nearly as bad going into this year as it's going to be going into next season. So look, I mean, Cignetti has proven that he can coach football. He can, you know, coach football in the NIL transfer portal era. So I think they're going to be fine. But I just want to see what it's going to be like, especially with their program dealing with all these expectations, you know, because again, going into this season, we thought Indiana would be a nice story. Their win total was at 8.5. So, you know, it wasn't crazy that they could win 9 and 10 games. Nobody saw this coming. So if they do win the national title, or even if they don't, how do they handle those expectations? I think it's going to be really interesting to watch.
All right, talking to PJ Glasser here on Westwood One Sports. I do want to get to the NFL with you because you're not just a college guy. The NFL playoffs has had its own level of parity in terms of just, I know we were only one round in, but I mean, if you look at the first weekend, incredible games all across the board, including the Panthers, who I thought were just going to get run off the field by the Rams. And it was one of those things where you looked and went, oh wait, they actually belong here. This weekend now is the divisional round. This is one of my favorite weekends in sports. I know March Madness, the first weekend, is right up there, Peach. So I know it's not blasphemy here. We're going to put all of those into the group a little bit. But when you look at these matchups this weekend, is there a specific game that stands out to you the most for, you know, any reason across the board? Because I think there are so many different games where, you know, you can look at this for not just the storylines, but so many teams that you may like, and at the same time be able to poke holes in. It just feels so wide open this week.
It does. I think the game I'm most excited for is the Bears and the Rams, because Nick, as a Commanders fan, I'm sure you feel this way, that the Chicago Bears are this year's Commanders from last year, right? It's the same. It's unbelievable how it's like the same team. As you saw, your Commanders had a magical season. They won a couple of games in the playoffs, but eventually they just ran into a team that was too good in the Eagles that ended up winning the Super Bowl. And you see this a lot in sports. It happened a couple of years ago too with the Mets, where it looked like the Mets were the team of destiny. They were having this magical season, and then all of a sudden they run into the Dodgers, who won the last 2 World Series. I think most of us would agree that the Rams are probably the best team in the NFL. If they're not the best, they're one of the best 2 or 3 teams. And the Bears, again, they're having a great year. They had an unbelievable comeback against the Packers. I don't think any of us would consider the Bears the best team in the NFL. And I think eventually you just run into a team that's too good. And I think that's what Chicago is going to face this weekend when they take on the Rams. But because you have a team from LA taking on a team in Chicago, when there's going to be some weather and there could be some wind and all these other factors, and they're not used to dealing with that, it definitely makes it super interesting. So I know a lot of people, Nick, right now, they're loving the Bears, team of destiny. You're getting 3.5 points with them at home. Like, let's all remember what that first half against Green Bay looked like, okay? Let's remember how ugly that was. And the Bears have looked like that team for a lot of this season. They've just had all these great fourth quarter comebacks. I don't know if you want to play that kind of half of football against Stafford, Puka, McVay, and the Rams. So it's the game I'm most looking forward to, but I think the Bears' magic is going to run out. So I like the Rams in that game.
Did you know, you may know this, you may not, that Bo Nix has a chance to make history for the Broncos? There is only one quarterback in the history of the Broncos that has been drafted by the team that has won a playoff game. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That's a great stat.
So do you know who that quarterback is right now? I wonder if you could guess this.
I don't actually know.
I don't think you can. You know what? I'm not even going to make you wait. The only quarterback that has ever won a playoff game for the Broncos while also being drafted by the Broncos is Tim Tebow. The only one. How crazy. Wild is that?
Tebow, yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
because John
crazy.
Elway was drafted by the Colts.
Right.
Yeah. And so Bo Nix,
obviously.
If he wins this game this weekend, yeah, right? It's crazy to think, but that is the only quarterback that has been drafted by the Broncos that has actually won a playoff game for them now. So wild to think about. PJ Glasser, you're the best, buddy. Good to talk to you. Check him out Monday night, GameDay Garage for the National Championship game with Ryan Horvat, streaming live on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, all of the things. Good to talk to you, buddy. Thanks for coming on.
Good to talk to you, Nick. Appreciate it, man. Enjoy the games.